This is going to be my take on the Tesla Cybertruck. Keep in mind, I own Tesla stock, so there might be a subconscious bias. But here is how I would look at it. At first, I would look at the price. So a price comparison of what you can get for this kind of money. $100,000 for the most expensive model. It gives you supercar acceleration under 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds. Now compare this to the closest thing I can think of, which would be a sort of an off-road Lamborghini for $250,000. It is literally 2.5 times as much money to buy, and it only has 2 seats in a very tiny luggage space. And if you look at the acceleration is 2.5 seconds. So basically 1/10 of a second better than what you got from the Tesla. It's basically the same thing for 2.5 times as much money. But this is not the end of the comparison. If you look at the fuel you have to put into this thing. Here we go. 13 miles per gallon. Okay, let's make it 15 as a compromise. I guess most people would be driving it on some kind of a highway, but they might do off-road as well, because the whole purpose of it is, both for the Cybertruck as well as this Lamborghini, is that they should be able to do some level of off-roading. So let's look at this. Let's say I drive 12,000 miles a year, which is probably going to be average, and divide that with the 15 gallon. So I'm going to be using 800 gallons per year at a cost of minimum $3.50 for premium fuel. So that's $2,800 extra on fuel, which in the case of the Cybertruck would be practically zero, because you can charge that truck for next to nothing. And for a decade, it would be $28,000. So you can deduct $28,000 from the price of this thing. So you're really buying it for more like $75,000 instead of $100,000. Now looking at the lower end, so the bottom basement price, that's $50,000. That is actually the same as you would be paying for a Ford. The Ford is also $50,000, and when you look at the parameters with this model, you are only getting a single motor and only 6.5 seconds of acceleration, which is still really, really good. But the Ford is actually better. So the Ford is actually likely to be a better deal if you just want a basic $50,000 truck. The thing is, and here we are going into the design aspect of it. Ford and many others have had a hard time slicing a piece of the electric vehicle pie out for themselves, because what we have seen from the example of the Prius, for example, is that most of the early adopters who buy electric cars want to make a statement. Whether it's a hybrid or now an electric, they prefer something with a radically different design, so that when they are driving down the highway, it would be visible from far away that they are driving something that's off the charts. I mean, you look at this car, when you see this in the parking lot, it's definitely not an average car by any means. It's radical. The design is radical and intentionally so. If you look at the interior, the design is pretty much the same as any other Teslas, but keep in mind, when you're buying the top-end $100,000 Tesla, the ability to carry 4 adults in comfort with a ton of luggage is a huge advantage, at least over what you would be paying for, say, a Lamborghini or some kind of a supercar that has the kind of acceleration that could compete with the Tesla. Also, in the design section, I should mention that there are all these gaps and irregularities. The way this car was put together is something that looks sloppy, but it is not flimsy. It's not like the structure itself is a weak structure. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's quite a tough structure. And the design was influenced not just by a desire to look different, but also to make it tougher, to make it more rugged, and for it to last longer. Inside, it also looks radical. You could say that it's very simplistic or minimalist. The fact that it's minimalist is not necessarily an indication of it not being high quality. It's just a different approach. So it looks like bare bones, but it's not necessarily so. So that's the design and the quality also. I don't think the quality or the durability is any less than what you would be getting with the Ford, but obviously it does not have the fit and finish. It absolutely does not have the fit and finish of the Lamborghini. The Lamborghini is going to deliver on that front for sure. And this is an area where Tesla is probably never going to be able to compete with the big guys, with the people who originally made top-end supercars because of the interior and the fit and finish and all of that. This is a bit like the situation with the Apple computers when Steve Jobs was around. Although other computer companies would quickly follow up and adopt his ideas, and sometimes even in a better way, just the technology, Apple technology, was so far ahead of everybody else that it was impossible to really compete with him. Everybody was trying to play catch up. And I think that's what's happening with Tesla as well. It is. If you look at Tesla sales, they have been going up for the last decade almost consistently. There have been some setbacks here and there, but overall, this is like a very promising, very positive graph that's just getting better and better. And even if you look at the lockdown of 2020 and all the problems around 2020 and 2021, even then the company continued to do pretty well. So my verdict is that so long that Steve Jobs is alive, this company is going to continue crank out all kinds of futuristic, amazing marvels, and people are going to buy them. But eventually the rest of the industry is going to catch up, and there will be companies that can produce the same thing with much better fit and finish, but they are going to be a decade behind. And the one thing they still cannot understand and refuse to understand is that people who are early adapters, and maybe even the people who will buy into electrics later on, are not going to be interested in an average car just with the gasoline engine having been swapped out to batteries. So the kind of vehicle that this Ford is, and countless of others that look just like a gasoline counterpart, but they have different technology inside, is not very interesting to the consumer. And once the consumer sees all these new futuristic designs and shapes, they are probably going to expect it from everybody else. So eventually this design is going to win out. And the quality, I think, is going to be good enough for any of these Tesla products to last for a decade. That's about how long the battery pack is going to last, and most people don't care beyond that at all. Is this going to be a collector's item? I think all of the early Teslas are going to be collector's cars, even if they no longer run or fall apart or whatever, just because they were the first. And in addition to all of this, something that should be mentioned is this, that when you buy a Tesla, unlike when you buy a Ford, a BMW, Mercedes, any kind of GM electric, you don't get a high-speed charging network with it. There are some moderate speed charging networks that you can buy into. You can look on the Google map, but they don't have this kind of coverage. They don't have the speed. So what you're buying really with the Tesla is to get into this charging network and to be able to go anywhere, almost anywhere in the United States, even parts of Mexico and southern Canada, without having to worry about range, which is a huge, huge plus over the rest of them. So I think it's an exciting new vehicle. I'm looking forward to seeing this on the road. This is really cool car, very amazing looking car. But on the other hand, I understand that some people are going to hold off until other companies follow up and come up with their own Cybertrucks.